Well, that's got some weird noises coming out of that thing. Hey folks, back out in the shop. Today we got a 2007 Ford Focus with basically no brakes. The pedal goes right to the floorboards. First thing I did, of course, was pump it a bunch of times to look underneath for leaks, and there didn't appear to be any. Either all the fluids gone the way of the dodo, or we have a different problem. So let's get into this. Well, first order of business, do we have any brake fluid? Yeah, no, it's completely dry. Like there's no brake fluid. Yeah, that's definitely not what you want to see when a car rolls in. See, now this is the part of these jobs that make you question your career choice. Customer drove a car here yesterday, dropped off front brake pads, said it just needs front brakes, that's it, just front brake, put them on, don't look at anything else. How do you not look at an empty master cylinder? But until we address the lack of fluid, everything else is moot. So let's find us where this fluid's gone. Okay, well here we are underneath the 07 Ford Focus. Looking at the front wheels, the inside of the wheels is dry, and that's usually a telltale sign. If you're seeing brake fluid here, you know that something in the brakes themselves, the flex line or the line within this vicinity, has given up the ghost and is leaking. That's dry as well. There's no leaks anywhere up in the front, which the front brake system is basically right all in here. Back lines, pretty easy to see on this thing. Is that a... yeah, that's a rotted floor. There's a nice hole in the floor and another one right there. And I don't know about you, but that would drive me friggin' nuts. Like, rip them off. Not my car, not my call. Anyway, somebody put a piece of hose on the emergency brake line for some reason. I guess it was probably wearing out there. Again, dry here. Line looks like it's been replaced. It's still not even rusty right there. And for an 07 up here in the rust belt, that's a sure telltale sign. Oh yeah, there we go. There's our leak. You can see it coming right out of the bottom of the drum back here. So they probably blew a wheel cylinder out of it. So the thing about, just put front brake pads on it and don't worry about nothing else. Nah, you know, I'm going to make a phone call here in a minute and try to explain to the guy, and he's going to obviously think, well, this shop's just out there to get me. They want a little extra money. I can't, in good conscience, do front brakes and send someone home with that. I mean, you have no brakes. I don't care what you got. You got no brakes. There's no fluid in the master cylinder. It's one common reservoir. When that leaks, everything's gone. So we're gonna have to make a phone call once we get this wheel off and have a look. He didn't even want me to take the back ones off, but we're getting into it. Inside of the rotor's all grooved up, but he told me they would be. There's nothing wrong with these brake pads. Rotors are junk. Oh boy. Are we seeing that? It's not a wheel bearing. Tie rod end. I don't know, do we have a bad tie rod end? now, big fella. This freaking car is a death trap.
Many minutes later.
All right, these Ford Focus, they have a unique style of rear drum brakes on these. They're a lot like the old, back in the day, where you had to take the wheel bearing out to get the drum off, and this is no different. You got to pull the cap, take the nut off. The bearing is part of the brake drum on these things. Weird system, don't see it very often like that anymore, but that's what they are. And of course, when you're a rust belter, you can pretty much guarantee that this cap is going to fight you. Coming off pretty easy, actually. There's a couple of slots you can use here where it's been off before. Alright, so in there is a nut. I don't have the metric equivalent, but it's an inch and, what is that? Inch 3/16. Inch and 3/16 fits, and it's not hard to break loose. Nothing to that part. The fun part's coming up. Alright, there's your nut and washer. You can see in there is the actual bearing. And the bearing should come off the shaft pretty easily, no more difficult than any normal drum, but that's probably been on there since '07 when it left the factory. So we'll see. This wheel bearing on this one is shot. Remember, the wheel bearing is part of the drum assembly on these. You can see here what's going on. So we got a bad tie rod end up there and a bad wheel bearing here. This thing has got to be all over the road. I mean, that much sway in your wheels, it's going to be a nightmare to drive it. I'm going to have to talk to the customer, see what he wants, because he came in for, you know, a set of brake pads. And we're already well beyond that and into the reality of older cars in this area. To get these things off, you can pry on them with screwdrivers and the normal stuff. These are notorious for not wanting to go. So I saw a video a while back of a guy who used a slide hammer piece. Put it right on there, held it on with some lugs, and the center rod I took out of harmonic balance reporter kit that I have. So we should be able to screw that in and walk this drum right off of here. So now that we got a little leverage on it, you can see how bad that wheel bearing is. Okay, that's not good. All right, you can see that's working like a charm. There we go. It should just come out of there now. Yeah, I think we got a bad wheel cylinder. Lots of brake clean in here. All right, so we definitely got a bad wheel cylinder. There's nothing else in here that's going to leak. We need to order up a wheel cylinder. He's going to want to keep these pads. They're not bad. Brake fluid softens up brake material, but these are all still in one piece, and they're reasonably new. Okay, so to get these out is really easy. All you're doing is pushing in on these retainers and pulling them off. Just like that. They're not like the old ones that you gotta turn. There's actually a slot in them. The whole top is cut out, so you just push it in and hold the back pin so it doesn't move. And you can generally get these out by hand. Sometimes you run into a stiff one like that. Okay, so you can see the slot in these, real easy. Okay, so with that, for what we're doing, this is all I need. I don't need to take the springs off because we're not changing these pads out. We just need access to this wheel cylinder. If you look right here on the left, see that wetness behind the boot? That's where all your brake fluid's coming out. So in here is a spring, a piston, and each piston has a rubber seal. You can see it just dripping out in the bottom now. Well, you can't, but... And what happens is that rubber seal, or the cylinder itself, gets all scratched up. And sometimes you can rebuild them. But for the money, it's just better to put a new cylinder on. Because if that seal's gone, something caused it to go, there's probably a scratch or a groove inside the cylinder. And that's going to tear up a brand new seal pretty quick. All right, we're moving on to this wheel bearing here. First thing you got to get off is the dust seal. Straight screwdriver. The lip is down here on the outside. And it should come off right there. Here we go. Pretty easy. Okay, just the dust cap. Right, and there's the ring. So once you get these two pieces out, try to do them without damaging. They come out pretty easy. You got a C-clip in here. Alright, C-clip comes out real easy. It's a stiff one, but it's not hard to get at least. Just like so. Now we're going to take it over to press and just pop that out. Alright, pushing out that bearing, nothing fancy here. Just got to find something that fits the outside of the bearing. There's our bearing. That's a bad bearing. Alright, we got to get that lock nut loosened up for the tie rod end, and then remove this nut and then knock it out of the spindle. What do we got here? We got a 21 for the lock nut, a 22 right here on the tie rod end to hold it. And let's see if we need heat or not. Oh, we got it. There we go. You can see here the nut's not turning. The whole inner tie rod is turning, which is not so uncommon. It can turn in there. That's not a problem. It's a ball socket. And this actually is good because it preserves our alignment a little better. But usually you want that nut to turn on there. If you can hold this, there's a knurled part right here. You can a pair of vice grips and hold that and get that to turn. But for now, we're just going to leave that. Tie rod loose. Now we get that in. Tie rod nuts 15. Oh my God, it actually came real easy. I'm amazed. Never expected that. Okay, this is probably overkill, but I already have the socket here, so what the heck. Okay, normally I wouldn't use a pickle fork because it tears up boots, but this is garbage anyways. And you just unscrew it. Yep, definitely junk. Oh, an 1/8 of an inch of movement in and out like this, which is a bad thing. So there's the two bolts, that one and the one where the socket is, that you need to get out to take the wheel cylinder, and obviously the brake line. That's your bleeder screw. All right, so the brake line, everything here has been soaking in penetrating oil for about an hour or so. It just pops out. These are just 8mm, so they're tiny little bolts. They'll pop out with a 1/4 inch, no problem. But that's the kind of janky setup you're going to need because you're dealing with a spring and a shock, all of which are in the way. And again, like I said, you can't get that back one with a wrench. All right, so when it comes to the brake line itself, not a big deal. It's a 10mm. And as you can see, I got this one loose already. I did heat it up with a propane torch because it was being finicky. If you have to damage this line because it's too rusted, it's no big deal. The other end's right here. So it's like 1 foot of line. I can make that. I make brake lines all the time. So I wasn't too concerned, but just be aware, if yours is a rusty one, chances are you're going to end up having to replace this brake line if you're doing a wheel cylinder. And you can buy the generic ones, pretty cheap, but a little bit of torch don't hurt it. And there's your wheel cylinder. Okay, so that's disassembly for this project. All in all, not bad considering, you know, it's a rust belt job, and 9 times out of 10 this is all torch work. These come out pretty easy, so not too bad. We're just waiting on parts now. They had everything in stock in a small town, which is a miracle. So Mikey and his mom went in to go get me my parts, and they're getting me a coffee. So anyway, as soon as that's back, we'll get to putting some of this stuff back together. Okay, there's the press setup with our new bearing. It pushes from the inside out, obviously. All right, it's just started. I got a sleeve that's the same diameter as the outer. Actually, it's a little bit smaller. Never push on the inner race or the dust cover. We're just gonna pop that in. Go ahead, Mike. Goes in real easy with a press. Keep going till it stops. You'll know when it stops. Keep going. You'll feel it. That's probably good if you're pushing that hard. Yep, you're done. So that's the setup I had. You can see there, the bearing's in. You should be able to see that groove. That groove is where the ring goes. Mike's gonna put in our clip here. There we go. That's in. Yep, you're in all the way. All right, you got your 2 little dust covers. Pop that one back in there. Okay, we just tapped that inner dust cover in. Now we're just gonna push that one on and give it a little bit of ding dong there. There we go. That's ready to go back on. Yep. Okay, and just something kind of curious that I noticed here. These are a single flare brake line. I have never seen brakes with a single flare. That's bizarre to me. Usually they're what they call an inverted or a double flare. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Anyway, new wheel cylinder. I already got the bleeder screw just screwed in there. And it's got a little rubber O-ring that goes around here. This one that was in here was siliconed. Reason why I start the brake line before I bolt the wheel cylinder in, because it gives me some wiggle room. I don't want to cross thread it. I'll have to fight with it. So our brake line's on loose. Now we'll put our tiny little bolts in here, little 8mm jobbies. All right, there's one bolt started, and then the tricky one's back here. That's the one where you need little girl fingers.
Am I blinding you?
A little bit, but I don't need my eyes to do this. I use the Force. I grew up on Star Wars. I used the Force. I said Mike. You got it behind the suspension link and the shock, and they're bending the bracket here. Wheel cylinder's in. All we're going to do now is push out on this spring and get this back in on the pistons like that. That's it. Alright, now what we need to do is put our little spring retainers in. Okay, so again, reach around the backing plate, hold one end with your finger. These are super easy. You just got to squeeze them. And then push up. Like that. Okay, I like to turn them over because they can't fall out if they're like this. Alright, gravity is pushing them on instead of off. Alright, with that, that side is done. Alright, put the drum back in here now. If you're putting new pads on, you gotta back this adjuster off. Alright, you just push it over right here, bracket off, that closes up the diameter here so that you can get a drum on it. In my case, same one going back on. I just made sure it was working. And it appears to be. That's the way the drum should go on. You shouldn't have to hit it. You can see it should come off just as easily. So you shouldn't need a puller the way I had to get them off. And there. All right, now we'll put the nut and washer back on. Nut and washer. Okay, so the torque on this is not like a taper bearing where you tighten it and check it, tighten it and check it, tighten and check it. It is a torque spec only. It's not a taper bearing, so the tightness of this isn't going to change this. All right, so 175 foot-pounds on that. As you're tightening, spin it counterclockwise 10 times. I don't know what the point of that is, but that's what the manual says. There we go. Okay, tie rod end. Remember how loose the other one was? This one, you can barely move it. Okay, that's what you want. Inner tie rod end. Again, that nut hasn't moved, so we know our alignment should be pretty close. Just bend it till you get the angle. So now there's no cotter pin. That's a nylock lock nut. It's not a castle. Doesn't need a cotter. All right, so let's just tighten those up. Torque on this guy is 26 foot-pounds. Done. Ain't going nowhere. Click, click. How's that? This master cylinder, as I showed you, was completely empty, so we gotta do a 4-wheel bleed. It's gonna take a few minutes. If you wanna know how to bleed brakes, there's plenty of YouTube videos out there. In fact, I might even have a couple. I know I have a couple. Anyways, we'll be back in a sec. All right, Mike's doing the ABS bleed here. Because we have air in the line from the master cylinder to the pump, we have to do this. Okay, press and hold the brake. Now press OK. And you just hold the brake the entire time. It says wait for 35 seconds. Chevy's very similar to this Ford. Just hold it. Don't push harder. Just hold it. Mike's like, I didn't know it did this stuff. Function complete. All right, let the pedal up. Press OK. Is that pedal a little harder now?
Yep.
Okay, so that bleeds from the master cylinder to the ABS motor, which is about on the floor underneath your feet. The rest of the lines are just a normal bleeding procedure. Okay, folks, there's your 2007 Ford Focus. You guys got a 3-for-1 deal on this. We did a back wheel bearing, a back wheel cylinder, and a front tire, outer tie rod end. So if any of those is troubling you, then you don't know how to fix it. Mike's just putting the wheels on and this thing's done. Thanks for watching. We'll catch us on the next one.